So here's my pearl of wisdom. Lead when it is needed, where it is needed, and do it as a team. Hi everyone, I'm Ruth Herrin. I'm the Director of Teaching and Learning at the American International School of Guangzhou. So my pearl today is a story in two parts. It's my background and my current reality and how they influence my conception of leadership. So I grew up in a household that straddled two different structures, matriarchal on my mother's side and patriarchal on my father's side. In a gross oversimplification, I'll describe a brief vignette of our family reunions or get-togethers. On my mom's side, the women's voices were dominant, giving commands and advice, deciding on the order of events, the movement of people, all while talking about the latest politics or a mishap in a random cousin's life. The men deferred to the women. Uncle Mike is known for saying, well, let's see what the boss says, referring, of course, to his wife, my Aunt Margie. My dad's side looked like the traditional roles. Women cooked food, the men discussed the news events. Decisions needed to go through the men. Any actions taken had to be approved by them. For example, my father's mother didn't and couldn't learn to drive until well into her 50s. Her domain was the house, his was the outside world. To step outside those boundaries was not something that you did. Then within my own household, my father was the one who had the answers to everything. I remember winning one discussion with dad, and emphasis, it was a question of winning or losing those discussions. If you needed a decision made or an answer to your question, you went to my dad. He knew everything. He commanded attention, and he was, in a way, my hero. But to switch stories, because this isn't just about my family. When I was first hired here at my current school, I was the youngest person on admin by a good 15 years, something which maybe I notice a whole lot more than my colleagues. I was hired on and I was told, now you're a leader and go lead. Now, I've learned about imposter syndrome. I've deconstructed it with colleagues and friends. I've had mentorships and been mentored. I've gone to PD sessions where we discuss leadership. Heck, I've even run PD sessions for our leaders about leadership. I've talked about pace setting, coercion, affiliation leadership, democratic leadership. And herein lies my cognitive dissonance. I know the variety of leadership styles. I've experienced a variety of leadership styles. But in my heart of hearts, my gut instinct bias that I push back against, my first reaction when I hear about a leader is that I think there's someone like my father, the dominant, authoritative leader. When I think about myself as a leader, I'm not like that. I don't make sweeping declarations about what we're going to do. I'm not infallible. And thankfully, I don't look a whole lot like my dad. So I'm sure you guys have heard of this woman, Herrin Hughes. She's a leadership coach, and she's a prolific researcher who studies distributive and contributive leadership, especially with the military. She states that traditional leadership comes from the military. Command, control, set the pace, execute. Sounds a lot like my dad. Now, this type of traditional leadership, it isn't wrong or incorrect, and it doesn't mean we need to scrap it. There might be times when we do need to rely on an authoritative figure to make a decision, to step up and be that hero. I know that during the beginning of the pandemic, we all looked toward our director to be that decisive figure for us. We needed it and it worked. But traditional leadership isn't always what our schools need. And it's not the only paradigm we have of making sense of leadership. Herrin Hughes says this traditional style of leadership supports the notion of hero leadership. The man, and it is usually a man, tells the team what to do. If they're successful, he's a hero. If there's a failure, the team has failed and he's still a hero. Then we have another style of leadership, distributive leadership. And as the name implies, it's leadership that's distributed amongst the team. The military calls this point leadership. Leadership is needed at unknown points and distributed across the activity. As Herrin Hughes says, leadership is needed right where it's needed, right when it's needed. Leadership might be bringing your technical expertise to the table. It might be your connections with someone who has a really good solution. It might be your ability to shift the emotional tone of the situation. I grew up in a household where traditional leadership was the norm. I was raised in a dichotomous structure of matriarchy and patriarchy, and I experience cognitive dissonance when I think of myself as a leader because of my internal biases about what is leadership. We have skills, strengths, experiences, abilities to contribute, and these combined with our sense of responsibility to our school's mission and vision, to the learners in our care, combined with a sense of accountability and the feeling that now is that time, that is what makes us leaders. So here's my pearl of wisdom. Lead when it is needed, where it is needed, and do it as a team. Go forth and contribute, for therein lies leadership.